And welcome back, everybody. We're talking to San Diego CEOs and business leaders. And today we've got another great guest because we've got Geoff Hamilton here, the co-founder and CEO of Stemson Therapeutics. Geoff, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Bob. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today. We appreciate it. Why don't we set the stage here a little bit and give me maybe your 2-minute elevator pitch for Stemson.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let me just thank you, Bob, for inviting me on the show. Looking forward to it. So Stemson Therapeutics is a local startup company based in San Diego. And we're a biotech-focused company where we are developing a therapy to regenerate hair follicles to treat hair loss for those folks, many of us, millions of us around the world that suffer from hair loss and have no good options today. So essentially, I have a 20-year biotech background here in San Diego, and we're taking a lot of the latest, greatest technologies that have been developed over the last 15 years that allow us to engineer cells to behave in certain ways. And so most companies are using that technology to apply it to diseases like cancer and others to treat those diseases. We're the first to try to take this latest cell engineering technology and apply it to treat hair loss. So we have a young and growing and energetic company based here in San Diego, filled with scientists and bioengineers and others. And we've got some great support so far. So we're really excited about our path forward.
Well, it's such a fascinating topic for me, and I want to get really into it. But first, I do want to talk about you a little bit more as well. I know you're from Cincinnati area, but you've been here in San Diego for a long time. And as you mentioned, a lot of experience in the life science field. Tell me a little bit about how you got to this point.
Yeah, so you're right. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I've been here in San Diego for over 21 years now.
Wow.
So I feel sort of like maybe I'm earning some local credibility, right?
Oh, you're a native, I say. 20 years for sure.
Yeah, that's good. So quite frankly, what brought me out here was what brings a lot of folks out here to San Diego, was just a lifestyle choice at that time in my life. In my 20s, and wanting to have both sort of the lifestyle plus, potential to live in a city and pursue a career. At the time, I wouldn't have guessed that I would stay here forever. I just wasn't, projecting myself out that far. I wasn't married yet, no kids. But once I arrived in San Diego and had spent a year or two here, it was just hard to imagine me leaving. I started building a good group of friends, started building up a good career. I found myself into one of the more exciting industries anywhere in the world, which is really thriving in San Diego. That's the biotech industry. And so got lucky enough to meet an amazing woman and settle my life and decide, hey, let's stay here in San Diego. Why move anywhere else? Why would we want to do that when we can have all that we want here and still pursue, all the aspects of life? And so spent, a good long time building a life here. Before I decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship and found Stemson, which we did in 2018, I had spent many years working at bigger, more well-known biotech companies in San Diego, such as Illumina, which is a name that most folks know these days. Hence sort of always envisioned myself at the very beginning of my career starting a company at some point, but decided to kind of take some time to learn on someone else's dime for a really long time, learn some lessons, make some mistakes before those stakes were too high when you're running your own company, and finally figured, towards more midpoint of my career to give it a shot. And so I'm lucky enough to get to do that right here in San Diego, in one of the major biotech hubs of the whole country. So it's very exciting.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. You're on the sales marketing side in the biotech industry for a long time, and you make the transition to founder CEO. How has that transition gone?
Yeah, I would say, of course, there's so much to learn that you cannot learn until you sit in the CEO, entrepreneur chair. It's
Right.
if you want to learn to play basketball, you can read about it, you can watch videos, but until you get out on the court and start shooting and playing against others, there's only so many things you can learn. So the transition has, had some real challenges, but I will also say, Bob, that given this was a goal of mine for a long time, I, through my time working for other companies, was specifically pursuing certain experiences, sets of knowledge, skill sets that would help me understand how to run a company more generally. And I was actually pretty transparent with, some of my managers through the years when they asked me, what are your, ultimate career goals? I would just tell them, I said, hey, look, one day I'd really like to start a company. And the good managers that I had would actually help me work towards that. So I felt, week by week, year by year, always kept it in mind, working towards it. So some aspects for younger, less experienced folks that haven't had, over 20 years of experience under their belts might, struggle with a lot of lessons they haven't learned. I was able to get some of the lessons around people motivation, organizing teams, just running the show, if you will, how to plan, how to anticipate future scenarios that are all important to run a good business. I learned a lot of those at other companies, and in some cases like Illumina, at just world-class companies that really train their folks. The other thing was I sought out positions inside those companies that were sort of like running business units, running products, launching products. And as you said, I've got more of the commercial background in biotech rather than coming from the science track. While I learned a lot of the science on the job and enough to really be effective, my experience in launching products, helping develop products, helped me understand how to, collect a group of people that are required, whether those are investors, employees, other outside parties that could all come together in one team to help make a startup company a success. And I think that's probably an area where I've felt more prepared, was how to actually bring a group of people together with disparate capabilities, disparate backgrounds, all to pursue this effort. And that's something I had to do, at other companies. So it helped prepare me. Having really good advisors with you as well, I think is really critical. Seeking out those folks who've done this before, who has actually helped, start up a company or advised companies. I've brought some of those people on board as well to help cover my blind spots. We all have them. So far, I think we're doing okay. We're on a good track building the company. We've gotten good funding, and I think sure there will be many lessons ahead of us, but so far I think we've been able to manage our way through them.
Has there been any area where you've been really surprised?
Yeah, so the area where I've been, I think, more surprised is, I think the passion for the specific application we're pursuing, and that is hair loss. And my surprise has kind of two elements to it. One is the surprise at how passionate and fervent a number of people out there in the world are about this problem, because so many people experience hair loss. It's astounding, the scale of the hair loss problem, especially for adults, right? As you get older, you're more prone to hair loss. The stats are like something around half of men by the age of 45 and a fourth of women by the age of 45, which a lot of folks don't talk about. That this particular application area has a tremendous impact, and there's a lot of people passionate about trying to find solutions which just don't exist today. There aren't any good treatments. The other part that has been surprising as it relates to it is how few people in the biotech industry, how few scientists, technologigists, and others in this area ever even give a thought to hair loss as an indication to treat. And so, I guess, to be quite frank, nobody goes into scientific research or biology research thinking, oh, I'm going to go cure hair loss, right? Everybody says, I want to find a cure for cancer, or I want to find a cure for Alzheimer's, or whatever other challenge you have. And so there was this really, really interesting mismatch that I encountered around the level of passion out in the community more broadly for people really severely impacted by the challenge of hair loss, and the lack of any focus or investment of applying today's therapeutic solutions and processes to this problem. And perhaps, the industry in the late 80s and 90s, the pharma industry gave it a shot. They launched Rogaine, they launched Propecia. I think the last attempt was 1992 when Propecia was approved. And there was some interest and passion back then, and it just died really quickly. And for 30 years now, no one has tried really. And technology and our understanding of biology has moved rapidly since then. So I think those are probably some of the surprises that I wasn't expecting.
Well, Geoff, that's just amazing to me. Just the size of that market, as you mentioned, with so many people, going bald at early ages on the men's side, and then women also having the issues. And I think you mentioned Propecia and Rogaine. Are those really the only remedies that we have right now? I mean, like you said, I remember those from 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So as far as clinically approved, regulatory approved therapies, those are the only two. That's it.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't other options that people pursue or that dermatologists and others try to offer to patients. For example, there's a much more serious and invasive procedure called hair transplant surgery, and it's an actual surgery that you got to go under the knife for, where they extract entire pieces of tissue, hair follicles, out of one part of the head. Which permanently removes them, by the way. They don't regrow or regenerate because you're digging out the entire tissue under the skin that generates the hair shaft. And you're just moving it to a new area, wherever your target area is that you lost your head. So, there are people that do that. Believe it or not, there's about 200,000 of those procedures performed in the United States every year. But compared to the tens of millions of Americans losing their hair, it's actually a small percentage. So the rest of them, they either attempt to take Rogaine or Propecia, which hasn't really delivered great results. A lot of folks have wigs and other kinds of things on their head that sometimes they don't even want you to know about. You probably encounter people on a daily basis who have some sort of wig and you don't even know it. There's a lot of them, and I'm kind of gaining sensitivity, if you will, to those folks just because I'm paying attention to it now. And then other folks try to get various injections or serums put into their head that can sort of temporarily excite your hair growth, but don't actually solve the problem in the long run. They just help short term. And so those are roughly the kinds of options that they have. But you're right, as far as clinically tested, clinically approved therapies, there's just not much out there. There's just those two, Rogaine and Propecia.
It's amazing. Well, tell me a little bit about the science behind what you're doing. I know you're using stem cells, and we got to keep it kind of low level for business people like me, but tell me more about it.
Yeah, so let me try to keep it high level and simple, which I think we can do to make it understandable for you in the audience here. Is the first sort of primer to keep in mind is that hair loss at its fundamental basis is a degeneration of the cells and the tissue in the skin that are responsible for generating the hair shaft. So those specialized cells up here, they're going away. You're losing those cells. And so that little hair follicle tissue under the skin is shrinking away. Or in the case of people who get surgeries on the head or burns or some sort of accident, blunt trauma to the head, that tissue gets destroyed. And all that grows back is scar tissue that's incapable of generating a hair shaft because the hair follicle cells and tissue got destroyed. Those are also a population of people we plan to help. So just think of it, this is in general, your cells are going away for various biological reasons or because of traumas and injuries. And so, and at the fundamental basis, Bob, we have to replace those cells. You have to be able to make a new set of hair producing cells and put them back in the area where you want hair. And so at its fundamental level, the fact that we are now able to engineer cells, in other words, like make them do certain activities or make them transition from one cell type to another, and in our case, we're making them become hair producing cells. that we can now make new hair cells. That is novel. That has never been done before. That is sort of the big breakthrough that now didn't exist in the past, that enables a new type of solution that can be brought to the market to treat hair loss. And these cell types that we're working with that we can engineer, other companies are using them too. This is actually a phenomenon that I would recommend you and your audience pay attention to more broadly for other types of therapeutic uses where
Yeah.
you're experiencing a loss of cells. A great example is Parkinson's disease. There's a company right down the street from us that is taking the same starting cells as we are, but they're engineering them to become brain cells so that they can replace the lost brain cells that Parkinson's patients are experiencing. We're just the first to take this technology and point them towards hair cells. And so, we have this, new population of hair cells that we've created. And then, we have a special sort of proprietary method that we're working out right now in testing in the lab to understand how to transplant them in a way that would yield a consistent, durable hair follicle. But at the crux of it, it's all about those cells that have been programmed to become hair cells. I hope that makes sense at the highest level.
No, it's perfect where you're regenerating the cells that grow hair. I love it. And I know you've just received some new funding. How far along are you in the process of making this a real reality for people?
Yeah, so we're making really good progress, and everybody always asks the question of like, well, when are you going to start human clinical trials, and when is this going to be on the market? And I mean, I would love to have a magic 8-ball to tell you and everybody else, and tell my own team for that matter, when are we going to be done? The reality is, we're doing things that have never been done before. This is highly novel. We can't perfectly predict, but what I can give you is a sense of where we stand roughly today. So we we can sort of reproducibly create the cells that I just described, the hair producing cells, that do require some further optimization. I would not underestimate the challenge of reproducibly, consistently generating the cells that we need. They're alive, and cells are hard to control. And they're sort of like a human population where you're trying to get everybody, for example, 300 million people to all wear masks, for example.
Yeah.
And, different people react differently to it. Some are fine with it. Some are in the middle. Some aren't fine with it and don't necessarily all behave the same. Cells are the same way. They don't always behave the way we want them to. So we have some work to do to kind of more robustly, consistently produce the cells. But I think we're well on our way to resolving that. The harder challenge is, how do you control the cells upon transplantation to generate a healthy, normal, and durable hair follicle that can yield a hair shaft? That is really the big challenge that we're focused on now, that we're working on with our team, and we're expanding the team to give a more robust effort towards this. That we think is going to be at least a couple of years to sort of test and cycle and understand how we have to optimize that process to yield healthy hair follicles before we would try this on humans. So, one thing we have to do, it's a part of any therapeutic development, you do some testing on animals. We need a real skin environment to be able to understand how to do this. And so we are working on a skin environment that as closely as possible approximates human skin, and just doing rounds of testing as frequently as we can. And so the team is really, really focused on sort of finishing off the optimization of that part of the process, which we then, once we're done with that, we feel like we can confidently march into human clinical trials. And once you get into human clinical trials, you have a different set of requirements and challenges you got to overcome, and it usually is a multi-year process to finish your human clinical trials at that point to get to market. So we've got a road ahead of us, and still some challenges to overcome.
It's amazing. One of the challenges I would think would be, and the question to you is, a lot of negative towards that. Not negative on the process, but, oh, Geoff, you'll never get that done. Everyone's always been trying to get a cure for baldness, and it never works. What makes you think it's going to work now?
Yeah, great question, and we do get that a lot. You know, so two things I would offer to you. Number one are the technological breakthroughs that have occurred over the last 10 to 15 years that lets us fundamentally approach the problem of hair loss and the degeneration of the cells occurring in the patients, so the people that experience this. We can now fundamentally approach that differently by creating these cells, and that just wasn't possible before. And really, that capability has only emerged in the last 10 years, thanks to some major advances in the biological sciences. And so, prior to Stemson, just nobody was thinking about trying to apply these advances to hair loss. The first ideas that folks, as this technology was advancing, their first ideas was, let's apply it to Parkinson's, let's apply it to cancer, let's apply it to type 1 diabetes. And we and my co-founder, Dr. Alexei Tursky, out of the Sanford Burnham Institute, where he actually invented the foundational technologies for our solution for hair, were really the first to think about doing this and try to make it into a company. So that just the technological breakthroughs that now enable things today that weren't possible 10, 15 years ago is probably the biggest reason. The second major reason I would offer to you, Bob, and your audience is that we've now collected a serious group of people, serious scientists, world-class biologists, world-class bioengineers, bioinformaticians, all these very complicated jobs that are highly technical. We've got amazing biotech venture funds involved that are very experienced at developing therapeutics. We've got a big global pharma company in AbbVie and their subsidiary Allergan that are backing us and supporting us and offering resources and help. We just have the right people now too. And that, of course, with any company, whether you're starting up a retail shop or starting up any organization, it requires the right people. And so the combination of the right technology today, which wasn't available, 10, 15 years ago, with the right skill set of people that are very, very passionate now. I mean, we recognize that we have a very special opportunity in front of us and that we're way ahead of the pack because nobody else is focusing on this. Nobody else has the technical expertise to apply the new technology the way we do. And so I think those two things together make me feel quite confident in our path forward. It's hard to predict exactly how much time and people and money we need, but we feel we're very much on this path to getting there, and we're really excited about the support that we're getting right now.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Last question for you, and kind of going back to the personal side just a little bit. Is there something or anything that you do maybe on a daily basis or weekly that keeps you laser focused on your goals or what you need to achieve next?
Yeah, So the answer is yes. A couple of things we think about that help in this. I'm a big visual person. Having something right in front of me and in my purview, my sight of my vision here really helps drive the focus. I do believe, when things are out of sight, sometimes they're out of mind. So actually in my office, in our vice president of R&D in her office, we actually share an office together. In our lab where our workers and our scientists and others sit, we actually have some posters and visuals of the key goals that we're trying to achieve. To always remind us every day as these brilliant people are making decisions every day and trying to figure out prioritization and are certain challenges just a distraction and we can save them for another month or another year, or
Right.
are certain challenges really, really important right now? Having those visual cues and looking at them and reviewing them on a regular basis really is helpful for us. And it doesn't mean that you don't need to change those goals from time to time, but that you're really careful before you do that. You're really thoughtful in changing those key goals and visuals. Because if there's a piece of advice that is stuck in my head from my mentors and other entrepreneurs I've talked to, the piece of advice they gave me was, Geoff, one thing that can easily kill a startup is lack of focus. And so your question is a really good, really pointed one, something I try to take to heart. And I reinforce that by using these visual cues. Just put it right up in front of you, right? Whether you want to write
Yeah.
it on your mirror every day in your bathroom to remind yourself, whether you want to put it in your office, wherever it may be, using those visual cues was something that I've used. It's really helpful for me, and I think the team as well.
Love it. Geoff, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. Continued success. I know we're all rooting for you. And again, look forward to talking again soon. Thanks so much.
I really enjoyed the time, Bob, and thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate it.
All right.